Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, welcome to the show. This is the Millennial Millionaire Podcast, and I am your host, Steven Cohen. This podcast is focused on bringing some of the wisest minds from across the globe to discuss concepts, strategies, and ideals that will lead them to be top performers in their respective industries and their lives. This show is for the millennials and millennials at heart to transcend their mindset, their health, and their income to the next level. We are so excited to have you on this journey with us. Welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show, everyone. We are on the cusp of 2025. Hope everyone is having a great start, finish to 2024 and getting ready for a great start for 2025. Today, we have a special guest, a buddy of mine, and a coworker. Believe it or not, we have Mr. Zach Hall. Zach is the founder of Mind RX Academy. He's been in the direct sales game, similar to me, for over a decade, 13 years in the game. He's a great dude. He's a great husband. He's a great father, and just super excited to have you on the show finally, dude.
Dude, it's awesome. It's awesome. I've looked up to you in more ways than one for quite a while, so it's an honor to be here, and I'm excited. Let's do this thing.
Likewise, dude. It's long overdue. So, Zach, for those that don't know who you are, tell them a little bit about your story, how you got from where you are to where you are today, and we'll hop into it.
Quick little highlight reel. So grew up Arizona. I attended school. I was going scholastic route and was going to be a doctor. So I actually graduated with a major in pre-professional biology, minor in biochem, scholastic dude. Did a year of medical school in California, and the cost of living there, I already had a wife, already had a baby boy. Cost of living drove us to look for a way to fund outside of the student loans. We maxed out the student loans, still wasn't enough in California for a family. They're meant for an individual. So I had done a summer of alarms with a buddy of mine, and I called him. I was like, I got 5 weeks between first and second year before second year starts to sell as many alarms as I can. And he said, actually, I'm in Arizona selling solar. I was from Arizona. So I said, that sounds like a dream. Let's talk about that. And one summer became 1 year, became 2 years, became 10 years, and just stayed in solar, never looked back, and made a career of it, which was kind of crazy. Halfway or a couple years into it, there was something. I worked for Solar City, might know the name. OG, yeah, back in the day, and Tesla bought Solar City, and then shortly after that, fired the direct sales channel, and I landed laterally at another company, but I took a nosedive in my performance and ultimately really my thoughts on myself. And that was like 2 very dark years. And the rebound of that and growing back from that and kind of the reversal of that trajectory sparked what is now my everyday, which is Mind RX Academy and helping increase the mental and emotional strength and performance of direct sales professionals. Because, man, that thing's a grind. Like, it will make or break you.
100%.
It almost broke me.
Dude, I love that. A lot to unpack. What I want to touch on a little bit. So you're going to school to be a doctor, right, in the medical field, which in society's eyes is like the pedigree of what you're supposed to be. I knew growing up, I was told if you're not a doctor, a lawyer, heart surgeon, professional athlete, or a rapper, you're a failure, right? You're going to be mediocre.
I like how the
average.
rapper's in there. Yeah, it's important.
But you decided to take a more unorthodox route and obviously get into 100% commission sales. Talk a little bit about that, because I think a lot of people have this perception of what they feel like society tells them that they should do, or the right path to creating success or creating a good living for them and their family. But I think a lot of people don't understand that there's so many different ways that you can create the life that you want. And a lot of them are maybe a little bit unorthodox than what their parents taught them.
100%. Yeah. Ultimately, it comes to what America's all about. I mean, America's about freedom. America's about creating. And I think a lot of us don't realize that. We're taught differently as we grow up with whatever environment we're in. It's more about being good at showing up, completing tasks, right? So we almost lose that sense of creation or belief in ourselves as we develop. And it's funny because in my tenure in sales, the number of people who have kind of fallen into this profession, it just baffles me. Life almost forced them into it for one reason or another, and I'm one of those. But what's interesting is if you truly commit to creating for yourself, there is no telling what you can actually accomplish. Like it's the old cheesy saying, right? Sky's the limit. Like it's incredible what you can do if you'll live into your own freedom. And that's what direct sales did for me. Betting on yourself, living a life based on your wants and goals and what's important to you versus trying to fit or conform with what other people might say. Albert Schweitzer is a doctor. I learned this from Earl Nightingale. He mentioned that the opposite of courage is not cowardice, it's conformity, right? And I think direct sales shows you that because you're not conforming, you're going against the grain, you're betting on yourself, even to the tune of knocking on people's doors who weren't expecting you. Like it can build you a lot. So it's been a fascinating ride.
Dude, I love that. And I agree with you 100%. It's so interesting because anyone that I've still talked to today or that's in my circle, whether it was door-to-door sales, pest solar alarms, or even network marketing, I have a lot of buddies from 12, 13 years ago that I'm still close with from network marketing who we were broke. But we, again, to your point, went against the grain and chose courage over conformity. And now they're running super successful businesses or they're super successful real estate agents. What do you feel like it is about that space, whether it's network marketing, direct sales, 100% commission, really anything that is against maybe the traditional go to school, get good grades, work 40 hours a week for 40 years of your life, that turns people into savages, at least in the professional? Because even yourself, you started in the direct sales space and now you're launching your own, you're running your own coaching consulting company. Like, what do you think it is? Where's the magic that happens there? Because I think a lot of people can pull something from that and hopefully go take that into whatever they want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say, I think the magic is what's happening between your ears, right? In that very piece of real estate within your own mind, within your thinking. A direct sales or commission only build your own business type profession, whatever sphere that's in, forces you to ask certain questions of yourself. And it's the answers to those questions that pull the creativity out, that separate you from the crowd. Where if you're going to a normal job, you never get put into an environment where you'll ask yourself those life-changing questions because you're just showing up, you're completing the task. You do the thing, you do the thing, you do the thing. The money just seems to flow or whatever based on what they're saying you're worth. When you go to try to prove your own worth and create value for the marketplace, it forces you to really get inside, get introspective, reflect, and that's where the creation and freedom really comes from, I would say. And that's that magic sauce is what's happening in here. And you don't get that from a normal type environment, a normal workplace.
Yeah, there's a great quote. It says, if you do in life what is hard, your life will be easy. But if you do in life what is easy, your life is going to be hard. Mm-hmm. I think when you don't go against the grain, and maybe I'm biased, I started this entrepreneurial journey at a young age. I'm grateful I got introduced to it when I was in my early 20s. But I don't necessarily think it's too late for anyone. You could literally make a decision that you're not happy with your current situation today and start acting upon it. Sure, it's a little bit challenging when you have kids and you have more financial responsibilities, but it's never too late to decide that you want something different in life. But I think you're right, dude. I think a lot of people, when they choose something that is a little bit unorthodox compared to what the system tells you that you should do, you find out so much about yourself, what your limits are, what your limiting beliefs are that are holding you back, and it almost transforms you as a person. So wherever you go, you bring yourself with you. So it doesn't matter what industry, what space, what sector, you've done the inner work, and therefore everything becomes a little bit easier long-term in your life.
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a certain ingenuity that comes from having like your back up against the wall. And when you're betting on yourself, you get put into those environments all the time. Like it's make or break time. It's time to get creative. How do I find the way to pay for the bills the next month? How do I get ahead? You're asking yourself questions that you would never ask yourself if it was just show up and do a job. And it's the ingenuity that makes life frequently, I found, more fun and fulfilling, but it's also dangerous. And so I think that's what keeps a lot of people away from it, which alone has inherent value and merit. Like exposing yourself to that type of environment, you're more likely to get creative. You're more likely to get thoughtful and reflective. I think most people live life from a survival point of view, but the best way to get free is to create. And that I've learned that multiple times over.
100%, man. I want to touch on a little bit about what you just shared in your story. You said that you went through some dark years, the adversity, the pit, the trials and tribulations, but that unveiled what you eventually wanted to do and created Mind RX Academy. And now you're, in the coaching space. Talk to me a little bit about adversity. Talk to me a little bit about the darkness and the pit, because I think it's easy to go on YouTube or go on Instagram and see the highlight reel of people's life, the Lambos, the freedom, the Euro summers, all the things that people will show, but most people aren't documenting the challenging part, the long nights, the doubt, the times where you just want to quit. So tell me a little bit about that, what you learned from it and how you overcame it and where you are today.
So go dark. We're going to go dark a little bit. And why would you share those things, right? Like, you're not thinking that far ahead that, hey, someone will eventually benefit from this. So maybe anyone watching this, like, if you are going through a dark moment, document it, because you will make it through. And the value that can come from that pain, the profit you can turn from it, not to say just in terms of a monetary profit, but who you evolve into by going through that pain, other people want to know that. And if you don't have it, I wish I had like video evidence of like the pit that I had fallen into, because it would make it so much more, I think, compelling and real for other people to see. Well, wow, he went through that and this is what he's turned into. Like, I don't mind what I'm going through because of who it'll turn me into. You know what I mean?
Makes you more relatable.
Yeah, exactly. So if you are going through something dark, first thing, like, pull out a camera, might as well document it. You're going to thank yourself in the future. But in terms of my own personal pit, I worked for Solar City, like I said. Something interesting happened. First of all, Tesla bought Solar City. And so you think of like that expectation curse. Our expectations rose quite a bit. Like, this is going to be the best thing ever. We're all going to get cars. We're going to drive up to a house. We're going to sell them the Tesla and the solar on the spot. Like, it's going to be amazing. 2 months into that, thinking we had like won the lottery for direct sales and everything. Tesla didn't want the direct sales engine anymore and let go of some 1,300 employees. There's two things that's interesting here. One, it's almost like I didn't even consider the other 1,300, right? I was not the only one going through this, but in my mind, it's like I was.
Woe is me.
Yeah, woe is me, right? And you start going victim. Second, this was a completely new experience, right? I had never gone through something like this. And what's interesting for people to know about like how humans work, you go throughout life, especially if you're trying to like bet on yourself, you're going to incur new experiences, things that haven't happened before. Your mind doesn't interpret the new experience almost as a new experience. It flashes images of something relatable. It tries to understand it based on what you've already gone through. So here I was, one of out of like 1,300 direct sales professionals, being told, like, go to another company. Like, we're not our business model anymore. And what flashed through my head, interestingly enough, looking back, it became very clear, was when my fourth grade friends became bullies to me, like by sixth grade. Like, guys that were my friends started like tripping me on recess and picking on me and stuff. And then also I was one of 6 kids, and I was definitely needing attention when I was a kid. Like, I cried all the time. Like, if my cereal wasn't poured right, people heard about it. But I got over that, and I became a kid who was just like good. My older brother had a squeaky wheel. Like, he needed a lot of attention. My younger sister was autism spectrum. She needed a lot of attention. So I became like the kid that didn't need as much attention. And that was the other thing that flashed in my head. It's almost like I wasn't wanted, right? Like, put him to the side. That's what went through my head, those images, when Solar City or Tesla said, go work somewhere else. And so what started happening, even though I landed laterally as a manager, small team, opportunity through the roof, I just started performing from that level, like I'm not wanted. And you can imagine what that shows up like energy-wise, what my actions look like. I had the discipline, the habit to work hard, but I had to work twice as hard to create even half the results that I used to create, which you fall into this pit of like, now you're doubting yourself. Like, what's wrong with me? I thought I was good at this job. I'm more experienced than ever. I should be better. So then you're starting to doubt yourself, and then acting out of that doubt, you're almost pushing jobs away. Now I start becoming desperate. The energy of commission breath and needing it, my income dropped by more than half. I have a wife, I have a kid, a second kid at the time. Now I'm thinking I'm failing as a father. Then like I had a church responsibility and I loved being able to show up, and I felt like I was failing at that. Like all I could see was evidence of failing in like every area of my life. And that it doesn't feel good. So I got to a pretty dark place. I had bought like an insurance package, and I remember like a life insurance thing, and I remember contemplating like the value of that might be worth more than me being around, like for my family. Maybe it would be better for them. I contemplated those questions. So yeah, that's the pit. That's about as low as it got.
Dude, it's a powerful testimony because obviously you got out of the pit, which is what we're going to talk about, giving people the tools and the ideals and the perception that they need to shift, because we all go through different moments, right? Some are more extreme than others, but life, I believe, is not supposed to be sunshine and rainbows all the time, because you need the duality, because if things are good all the time, you can't appreciate them because they're just law of familiarity. It's just the way it is. Where when you can go through very difficult times, one, that really shows your character and it shows the cracks in who you are to hopefully start to mend that. But more importantly, it gives you perspective when times are good to be grateful, and when times aren't good to know that there's better times coming. So give the viewers a little bit of context. So obviously you went through a very challenging time mentally, emotionally. You started self-sabotaging and you started relaying a lot of your maybe childhood challenges or traumas to what was going on and kind of morphing those together. What did you learn in that experience, and ultimately, how did you shift?
Yeah, no, So first, what I learned going through that was that we've got a lot more in us than we give ourselves credit for. The ability just to persist, have resilience, and keep going in spite of like this overwhelming evidence of you're falling short. Like, I mean, think about it. You find a way to survive. The human capability of survival is exceptional. So if nothing else, like bet on yourself, because you're gonna make it through more often than not. I learned how resilient the human being can actually be. It was huge. Second thing, I had really good friends, right? And so a friend of ours she was an entrepreneur, well, both of them were, but she was more the entrepreneur of the relationship. They gave us a book to read. And in reading the book and applying the principles, I started seeing a huge shift. It was a really cool book, too. It's called The Jackrabbit Factor, in case you're wondering. It was written by Leslie Householder, a student of Bob Proctor. And it tells some of the teachings that Bob teaches, but from like an allegory story type format of a guy who was up against a wall himself. And in applying those principles, I immediately began feeling better, thinking clearer, and showing up differently. And stuff started to fall in place. There were some pretty big obstacles that almost like magically melted away, and things were happening for us again, it seemed like, rather than to us. They were always happening for us. Now I look back and you can see that, because I needed to come down to recognize and appreciate the growth that I had. That polarity or duality like you talked about. But applying those principles, thinking clearer, I felt better, I acted better, the quality of that action went up, and the results started to come into place. And that was the reverse trajectory. And it was actually at that time, that was like fall of 2019, coincidentally right when Sunder started, that I made the decision, I want to do this for other people. I invested in coaching, spent more than I had, went through Bob Proctor's trainings and courses and stuff like that. And I was like, I got to do this for other people. Like, this is life-changing. So that's where the shift came out of. So I guess for you, if you're going through the dirt, if you're going through the mud and life seems to be stacked up against you, the two things I would say is trust in the resilience of the human spirit, which I believe is a divine spirit. And then two, reach out, reach up. You're not alone. And find someone that can provide the insight or perspective that will allow you to hold on or find the growth within the journey itself. There is a way up, there's a way out, and it's all starting here in the thinking. By thinking better, you'll feel better. By feeling better, you'll act better, and stuff will start happening for you again. Those would probably be the two biggest lessons I got from it.
Love it, dude. Faith and community.
That's faith and community.
It's more important than people know. And if you're not intentionally focused on those two things, then obstacles could look bigger than they actually appear. And using these different resources that, to be honest, we adapt from 10,000 years ago, right? When you think of the ancient civilization, right? They had a community of people that supported them and would help get through the winters and the famines and the challenging. And they had faith in some type of thing that is above themselves, which gave them the meaning to push forward.
That's huge, actually. Yeah.
So it's funny how through your story, right, these ancient concepts, ancient tools that people relied on back then are still as prevalent in 2025.
Yeah. And I guess it's kind of sad that they're not, I mean, yes, they're prevalent, but they're not thought of as much, right? Like we've almost learned to go at it alone, or we've been taught to go at it alone. Like don't collaborate, be on your own, like isolate and stuff. And even more now, so like all the phone stuff, like detach from what's out there and just focus on here. Look at me, look at all the things fighting for our attention. Dude, that's crazy. I hadn't actually thought about it before, but those two foundational principles, what you believe in, that there is a higher power, whatever that might be, and the people around you could be the rock that you need to build the new foundation. Yeah, 100%. I love that.
Let's talk a little.
Look at you, another gem.
Come
Always.
on, dropping gems here. That's why the viewers tune in.
That's right.
Let's talk a little bit about the mind. I know you obviously a student of Bob Proctor. I'm a student of his as well. Quantum physics, vibration, frequency, energy. How do you feel like understanding these non-physical concepts have played a part in your life? And how do you feel like people, whether they're starting their own business in the direct sales space, or maybe they're just a mother or a father trying to give their family a better life, how do you think they can apply these principles for their benefit?
So just to make sure I understand the question, the principles of the mind itself, or who you are, how that can be applied to whatever you're living through?
100%. Yeah. If I'm someone right now and maybe I'm in a challenging season, or maybe I'm stuck at a plateau, maybe I've made the same income. I'm a sales guy. I made the same income year after year, or I'm a mother and I just feel like I'm kind of a little lost in life and feel complacent. How can people use these principles of the mind to start shifting maybe some of their behavior, start shifting their outlook to hopefully shift their actual environment?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I love the question. Ultimately, everything is a reflection of your internal energy, right? So what your thoughts are is actually an energy state. And you can see that in the vibration or the expression of that vibration in the body. Right? We use words like emotions, right? Like happy, sad, proud, depressed, whatever that might be. Understand that those emotions are just words we use, like the names themselves are just words we use to bring awareness to the vibrational energy our body is in. Right? So you felt confident before. You know what confident looks like. You can pick it out on someone, right? How would you describe confidence?
Charismatic, good posture, conviction when they speak.
Yeah. Typically, if they're standing, they have like a wider stance. Their shoulders go back, right? The head's up a bit, versus like shame. You can see shame in someone. They're trying to hide, right? They're curling away. That's actually the physical manifestation of that vibrational energy. The source of that vibrational energy is the thought processes, the energy of the thought itself. So if someone is this is why what you focus on expands, right? If someone is a mother who's like thinking they're failure, in my instance, I was a father that thought I was providing poorly as a dad and I was failing in this area. My thoughts were, I'm failing in all these areas. The energy that created internally within the cells of my body were poor, depressed, defeated type energy. So even though I had the discipline to take the action, go out and do the work, the quality of that action was inhibited by the vibrational energy of defeat and depression. And so my results dictated the thought, I'm failing. In fact, whatever result you're experiencing, whether you're a salesperson in a slump or you're a father, not proud of the financial situation or unfit or something like that physically, that result is just a mirror of what the thought focuses are, of where your energy is in your mind. The body is just an instrument of the mind. So the way I think internally expresses the physical vibration of my cells, the emotion, which causes me to act with a type and quality that produces the result. Therefore, the result is a mirror of what the thinking is. So I guess the first step to answering your question, how we understand that, is if I don't like my results, trace them back to the focus that my thoughts are on. What am I thinking over and over again? And right there, you'll find the source of that result. A lot of people, when they first seek like mentorship or coaching, and this is one of the things that separates us at MindRx Academy, is they focus on like the behaviors, like the actions themselves. Hey, just do this or do that, or like exercise and eat less, right? But that's like a downstream problem. It's like if you treat the action, you're treating a symptom, right? The source of that, the disease itself is in the thoughts that you're focusing on. So where we try to get with our clients and the people we work with, and even what I've seen most transformational myself, is we try to find the source and shift the source of those actions. And therefore the actions follow suit and the type and quality of action increases, and then the result changes too.
Dude, I love this stuff so much. We could geek out about this stuff, but
Forever.
I agree 100%. I think so many people, they focus on their external world, what's not working. Go knock more doors, go read more books, go to more meetings, go practice your pitch, which all of that stuff is important. But to your point, it is a byproduct. Your results are a byproduct of your internal world.
Yeah.
Your neural programs, your conditioning, how you view the world, your self-image. And until those things start to shift, to your point, you're not going to shift your point of vibration to actually start going out there and seeing actual results. That's why, you can change your relationship, you can change the girl you're talking to, you can change the guy you're dating, but you're going to continue to attract that same person until you shift what you're looking for.
100%, dude. And so many, because that's just changing the circumstance. That's changing the external. And all of that stuff you listed, like read more books, go to more networking events, knock more doors, right? Make more sales offers. We all know that. Like that's not the rocket science type stuff. We just had a really cool event, right? Sunder's amazing. They put on an event. You go to these sales panels. You had a sales panel with your top performers. Daniel Hadabus is there. And it's funny because I hung out with him, and like everyone always asks the same questions. How do you do this? Or like, what's your day look like? And they know the answers before asking. Like, of course you're supposed to knock more. Of course you're supposed to be consistent. Like, we all get that. Why is that action not showing up for you if you already know what it is? It's because your thinking doesn't believe in that action, or doesn't believe in yourself, or something along that line. So we got to change the source if we're going to change the downstream stuff.
Yes. And I want to stay on this for a little bit because I think it's important. So we come to the conclusion that your thinking will create your feeling or your vibration. Mm-hmm. Your feeling, that vibration you will produce a certain action, and then those actions will obviously produce a certain result, so on and so forth. So my question, Zach, is how do people shift their vibration? Is it just desperation? Is it enough inspiration? Is it books? Is it coaching? Because I'm sure you have clients. I know I have sales reps who have been with me for years, and no matter what I say or how many events they go to or how many sales books they are exposed to, it feels like their results don't actually change. And that's because somewhere deep down, they're not willing to give up maybe that old life or their old self-image to create that new self-image to step into that new result that they're trying to accomplish. So what is it that people actually need to do if they're listening to this right now to go from, I'll use the analogy of the thermostat, an 80-degree in business to a 90-degree in business, and actually sustain that?
Yeah. Okay. This is awesome. Freaking awesome question. Let me ask you this. Have you ever had a rep where in a conversation you saw their energy change, like their vibration kind of change?
Yes.
And then they maybe said something like, I've never thought of it that way. Do you ever have an experience like that?
The aha moment.
The aha moment.
Yes.
Okay, here's what happens in the aha moment. People realize their current idea of the situation they're in is false. Change does not happen until people realize the falsehood of their current thinking. So much of leadership, and I experienced this myself, is trying to get people to agree or adhere to a certain way of thinking. But they won't do that. They won't think that way until they realize their current way of thinking, not only does it not serve them, but it's also false. It's a lie. They can't shift or adopt a new way until their current way of thinking is proven false.
I love that. So does that happen on an energetic level, a logical level, right? What needs to happen there for them to challenge their worldview to hopefully realize, man, a lot of these beliefs, a lot of these paradigms that I have aren't even mine. They're from my parents, they're from my upbringing, they're from society.
Right.
So what needs to happen to be like, okay, I will now work on deleting these and reprogramming new thoughts, new ideals, new paradigms that then serve me?
Absolutely. So, and this is a little cheat code. My breakthroughs, when I invested in myself through getting coaching, they both came on the back of this exact process. Finding something false, realizing it wasn't helping me, and then finding a new idea that I adhered to or like resonated with, which I'll explain that in a second, in order to increase my performance and the quality of that action that I was taking to produce better results. The first step is understanding and bringing awareness to what thought processes you're acting on. That's like the first step. So you can do that with a friend. You can do that with conversation. You can do that with a leader that you have, someone you look up to, because their quality of thought is higher than your quality of thought. So they'll have the new perspective that you can borrow, I guess. But again, the first part is like understanding the falsehood of your current thinking. So a tool I'll use with clients is it's thought download. Our brain has so much to process that we can often lose track of what that main thought is or which one's causing us to show up less than what we can. Does that make sense? So a thought download is taking everything in your mind about this current circumstance and writing it out on paper, gaining literal perspective. It's now out in front of you. You don't have to like catch it anymore. It's in front of you. And then you'll just go through this list of thoughts and you'll find something that like hits, like changes your expression just as you focus on it. Like, oh, I'm not good enough, or this isn't for me, or something like that. You'll find a thought like that you like triggers that negative energy. That's the one to disprove. So then the next step, once you find the thought, is to say, okay, whichever one is the source of that feeling like crap, how is this actually not even true? And look for the answer to that question. How is this idea not true? Where's the falsehood in it? And by finding something false in it, and I'll give you an example of this, but by finding something false in it, you'll feel a release of that negative energy because you've just disproven it. That's like the first most important step. Next is with that leader or friend, or obviously you can use us in coaching, finding a perspective that you resonate with, which means you have an emotional response to that idea, because then you'll actually put it in play and it will serve you. I've had people who we've offered a new suggestion, like you as a rep or as a leader, you've told your people, well, if you just knock this many doors, and they're like, yeah, if I knock, that makes sense, right? But they don't buy into it at a deeper level. It's not going to serve them. They're not actually going to go out and knock more doors. Does that make sense? So there's an emotional connection. If they feel like to it, if there's no emotional change, they're not going to act on it. But if they feel like excited by it, you ask them how they feel about this idea, and they're like hopeful or proud or something positive and empowering. That's an idea that you could build, which is then the third step, processing that idea as many different ways as possible, and as crazy as it sounds, over and over again. Like write it out, speak it out, hear it, record yourself saying it, listen to it.
Repetition is the mother of learning.
Exactly. You have to ingrain that new idea as like your way of thinking, because the external circumstances are still going to signal the old idea until that old idea dies, which is then being replaced by the new idea. I covered a lot really fast.
No, it goes back to the 4 ways people process information, those 4 milestones. I think it's important for people to understand before we move on. There's 4 levels of processing information. I know you teach your guys this as well. It's the first step is you're unconsciously incompetent, then you're consciously incompetent, you're consciously competent, and then you're unconscious competent, which basically means at first, when you're learning a new idea, when you're trying to adopt a new self-image, when you're learning a new sales skill, whatever the case is, you are ignorant to it, which is the first step, right? You don't know what you don't know. I don't know what I need to know in order to go out there and go make $10 million, right? It's completely foreign, ignorant to me. Then I go meet someone that maybe has made $10 million, and I become the second level, which is consciously incompetent. Now I am aware that there's all this information that I don't know. I just started this new job, came to the first meeting, and I'm like, oh my God, I need to learn how to handle objections. I need to learn how to pitch on the doors. What's a kilowatt? What is, a sales cycle, right? You become overwhelmed, and that's where most people quit, whether it's a new job, a new promotion, a new relationship, right? You start to uncover all these things that you are fearful because you're unknown. Eventually, after being exposed to that new thing enough time, you become consciously competent, which is now you know that you know the job, but it's not to the point where it's autopilot. And then eventually the goal is to get to the last step, level 4, which is unconsciously competent, which basically means it's part of you. It's autopilot, right? You speaking about these concepts and these life-changing philosophies, it's unconsciously competent. You don't have to study it anymore because you've done the 10,000 hours. That's what most people need to go to when start shifting their worldview or adopting new skill sets. They need to realize there's this hierarchy of learning and understanding what step they're on so they don't get discouraged. And to your point, a little bit ago, they just need to outlast until they figure it out.
Yeah, outlasting for sure. And that's why I lovingly refer to it as thought work. Thought itself is work. Most people don't think. Like most people aren't putting in the work around thought. They're trying to force themselves through willpower to behave a certain way, which no discredit to that. That's important. But again, like if you can train yourself to understand the source of it, the thoughts of it, and then develop the habit of seeing things differently, of thinking about things differently, that will serve you hundredfold, right? Because everything is a reflection of what the internal thought processes are. The programming from before that you didn't even choose, right? Most of the stuff that we're operating on is stuff that I didn't consciously choose to believe in. I just adapted to life that way because of the environment that I was brought up in, or the things that I heard that seemed like they were true, and there was some evidence. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Money is hard to get. And I operated on that for a while. It's hard to get money, but that's like so false. It's not hard to get. It's actually one of the easiest things in the world to get.
They print it.
You could always just print more or whatever, right? Like there's literally there's money on the ground. You easily, I would pick up pennies and I would be like, thank you for this sign of abundance. There's so much money everywhere, and you can see it not even in the money itself. You start to see money in the form of cars and the roads and a product. This podcast is beautiful. Like there's so much money here, But for a long time, I didn't operate that way. I thought money was really hard to get because I never consciously chose to disprove that or agree that it might be an easy thing to get. And it was crazy when that shift happened, like how much easier it flows, just as an example.
And I hope everyone can take some note here. We've been talking for the last 35, 40 minutes, and none of it has been about, hey, you need to work harder, you need to knock more doors, you need to make more sales calls. It's all about how do you level yourself up? Jim Rohn has a great quote. He says that if you work hard on your job, you'll make a living, but if you work hard on yourself, you'll make a fortune.
Absolutely.
Right? So I hope everyone can understand you can go work on the external, but it's a lot easier to work on the internal, and that will automatically shift the external.
It's an important question. A lot of times people ask, well, what comes first, like the skill set or the mindset? You understand, like to acquire the skill set, the mindset drives that. Like even if it's just go knock more, that's a thought process. Mindset is the accumulation of my thought, feeling, and action. That all makes up a mindset because it's the perspective the body takes towards a course of action, right? So to develop skill, the thought processes, the mindset is what drives you to develop a skill. Like you just start an opportunity. I want to get really good at this opportunity. This will change my life. That's a thought process that has an emotional attachment to it, which will increase the quality and type of action. This is why most people, when they start into the industry, they'll get a sale actually pretty quick because their mindset is high, even without the skill. And then we'll see a dip usually Because now they're looking at the external evidence to make them think what they should think as opposed to what they came into it with, right? You've seen that probably all the time.
So good, dude.
Yeah.
Let's talk about fear a little bit.
Okay.
Because I think fear is something that a lot of people struggle with, myself included. I'm sure you as well. Mm-hmm. Fear, the way I like to look at it on my best days, is false evidence appearing real. That's the frame that I choose to hold. But it's a challenging vibration. Because it holds a lot of people back from starting that new job, dating that new girl, leaving the relationship they've been in for a while, taking a chance on that new business that they want to start. So what is your relationship with fear, and what do people know to make sure that it doesn't hold them back from living their best life?
Yeah, cool. It's becoming my best friend. Like, fear is becoming my best friend. You ask about it in terms of a relationship. That's actually how I would view it. Let me ask you this. What's the worst part about the fear that you feel?
The logical response is the anticipation before the event. It's not even the actual event that I'm fearful of.
Right. So think about, like, you're in that state of fear. What's bad about that? Could you try to describe it? Almost as if I had no idea of, like, what emotion was. Could you describe what the bad part about fear is?
Worrisome, anxiety, using your imagination to create something you don't want.
Okay. And we've talked about how the emotion itself physically expresses itself in the form of, like, our body, right? So what's happening in your body when you feel fear?
You start breathing a lot more shallow. Your body language starts to curl over. You're probably crossing your arms or crossing your legs. You maybe get a little clammy.
So there's jittery. There's, like, you feel life almost leaving you, and it's kind of rushed, right? And at the same time, you're trying to collapse. It's this really interesting emotion, right? So if I didn't understand what emotions were, like if I had no understanding of emotions itself, I would ask you, I'd be like, so will you die? Like, it sounds like you're about to be drained of life. Like, are you bleeding out? And then you'd be like, well, no, I'm not bleeding out. I'm like, okay, so you're just, like, if you really thought about it, the worst part about fear itself is just the feeling of fear. We don't like how it feels. Okay. But what if you could frame, like you said, what was the acronym?
False evidence appearing real.
False evidence appearing real. What if you could frame fear and that emotion as a good thing? I think the biggest disservice we do to ourselves is calling fear a negative emotion. Like, what do you think would happen if you looked forward to feeling that way?
Your body language would probably change. Your perspective on it would probably change.
And then what things would you probably find yourself doing if you embraced that emotion and actually, like, could find a way to love feeling that way as opposed to just trying to avoid it?
Doing the things that I want to do that I'm holding myself back from doing.
Right. This is why I'm trying to interpret it, and I'm still building it. But this year has been a big evidence in it that fear has become my best friend. Like, I imagine myself feeling that way and putting an arm around its shoulder. Like, let's go, fear, you know? Like, you and me together, we're going to make something crazy happen. We're going to empower 1,100 sales and business professionals to go to the 7-figure mark and beyond, like, through creative thinking, all this stuff. So let's go, fear. Like, this is something. And most of the harm from any emotion, whether it's fear, whether it's stress, whatever it is, the harm isn't in the emotion itself, right? Like, you physically aren't bleeding out. The harm is in what you do to avoid feeling that way. Because life has taught you that you're not supposed to feel bad. But if you could disprove that if you could prove that false, that you are supposed to feel that way, then you spend all of the time doing what is going to help you grow and maximize the opportunity in whatever vehicle you're in. So that's how I am looking to view fear.
Well, it's interesting because that's kind of been a theme of our talk here. It's been dissecting the thought, the feeling, the vibration that we perceive as negative, which isn't actually, there's nothing actually positive or negative. It's the meaning we give it, right? Yes. It's the perception that we hold. At the end of the day, human beings only have two intrinsic fears. It's the fear of falling and the fear of loud noises. Everything else is self-imposed by our environment. Mm-hmm. Fear of dark, fear of public speaking, fear of going after something, right? All that is imposed by our environment. So if we can look at it from a logical standpoint, like you just said, where it's like, okay, I like thinking about the worst case scenario and things.
Yeah.
What is the worst case scenario? Let me extrapolate this out. Okay, if I end up missing this credit card payment, or if I end up taking this job and it doesn't work out, or if I end up jumping to this new opportunity, what is the worst case scenario? And chances are when you can extrapolate it out to the worst case scenario, it kind of minimizes the fear that you have around it because you're actually logically processing it and not, to your point from earlier, marrying it with past trauma and emotions from different experiences that you had that aren't correlated.
Right. What's cool is if you'll play that out, I like how you said, if you'll play out the worst case scenario, what you'll realize is an image of you picking yourself up. Back to the resilience of the human spirit, right? Worst case scenario happens, I'm still there picking myself up. So if I can live into the fear, then it becomes an opportunity for me to show myself love, for me to pick myself back up, which is ultimately the source of all confidence and improvement and performance in any sphere you find yourself in. So I think the first thing is recognizing that the fear itself is just an emotion. We're labeling it as something negative. I teach this concept, like you mentioned, duality, law of polarity. What if life was designed with like a 50-50 split between positive emotion or positive things and negative things? It's actually built that way, right? And we'll create from a positive place, right? And we'll avoid if we're feeling the negative. But the fact is, the only way to get more positive, or the only reason that we experience the positive emotion, is because we felt the negative, right? Because we know what that means. We wouldn't know what happiness was unless we had the opposite to relate it to, right? We wouldn't know what accomplishment was unless we felt failure. So if you can do that with fear, what's on the other side of that creation, right? And if I can make fear a positive association, then man, there's no telling what you can create. And that's why it's becoming my best friend. Let's go.
So good, dude. Dropping gems.
Let's go fear.
Okay, we'll pivot a little bit.
Okay.
How do you bridge the gap between skill and execution? We're talking about a lot of things here, a lot of concepts. Hopefully people are taking notes. Hopefully they're going to re-listen and, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. But to actually listen to something and apply it is a completely different scenario. How do people bridge the gap between skill, hearing good information, actually consciously thinking about this stuff, and actually executing it and making it unconscious?
Yeah, 100%. And I'll back what you said. I'll support that. Like, a lot of this stuff is things that people have never maybe even been exposed to before or think about, or at least from this perspective, it will take multiple times. If you hear it and like that sounds good, don't rest on it sounding good. Go back, listen to it, really try to incorporate it into your being. Here's how you close the gap, right? I kind of made this a tagline: close the gap between skill and execution. Ultimately, this comes from seeing your world differently, seeing yourself differently within your world. And the thought processes we've talked about before, that's 100% behind that. I think differently. But maybe I'll say it this way. Many people stay the same in whatever job they're doing or whatever results they're creating because they spend their time thinking about how things currently are. When I work with people, I try to get people to live into their freedom, live into like what a future looks like, and to actually spend some time visualizing or entertaining that thing, whatever that might look like, whatever their definition of success is. I want them living into that and spending time with it. There's a cool study done in Western Australia University, like in the 60s, where they took a group of individuals, split them into 3 groups and had them free throw, like shoot free throws. Basketball hoop. 3 groups. One didn't practice, was not allowed to touch a basketball for a month. The other group had to practice 20 minutes a day physically shooting the ball. And the other group, again, couldn't touch a basketball, but had to spend 20 minutes a day visualizing making the free throw, which, by the way, included seeing themselves miss. And if they saw visually their miss, they were to correct it and then make it, right? After the month, they got back, they did it again, same amount of free throws taken, they analyzed the percentage made. The group that didn't touch it, didn't touch the basketball, didn't practice mentally or physically, no improvement. In fact, statistically insignificant difference. The group that made, physically took the shots, 24% increase, as you'd expect. The group that visualized it, just saw themselves shooting and making the corrections in their mind, never even touching a ball, 23% increase. That's a 1% difference from the physical work to the visual work. So what if you spent your time, or at least 5, 10, 15 minutes a day, thinking about seeing yourself perform at a higher level? Perform in the execution of what skill you know you have or could grow into. Just visualizing it. What do you think would happen?
Fascinating, dude.
Right? Now, you then go out and do the thing and you act according to that mental energy. You're combining the physical practice with the visual practice. Boom. We need to do a study on that.
That's so fascinating, dude. It's interesting. We just got done with a conference that I was hosting, obviously, and every time I do that, people comes up to me and they're like, dude, you did a great job. You know, what advice do you have? How do you get good at public speaking?
Oh, yeah.
And it's always the same answer. I'm like, well, you know, I've been doing it for 13 years. I started with one person in the room and 10 people, and I would act the same if it was 100 people in the room. I'd have the same preparation. I'd have the same type of energy bringing to the table. And because I knew one day that there potentially would be 100 people. And
love that.
I think repetition and just doing it, right? The thing about public speaking is most people aren't willing to do it, break through that terror barrier as we just kind of spoke on. Therefore, they never put themselves in a vulnerable situation to get good at it. That's step number one. But you just bringing up that study, now I can add when I tell people, because I didn't think of it until now. Every time before I go on stage, I always visualize myself the night before, a couple nights before, delivering the speech or feeling the energy of it or a few jokes that I'm going to do. I don't actually prepare it in front of a group of people or in front of, probably should with my fiance, but it's all mental visualization.
Yeah.
And I believe that also helps me deliver the message a lot stronger than if I would just count on my years of doing it with repetition.
100%. And I'll back that. Like I've actually utilized this process to perform in public speaking environments. And it's probably one of the things that, I mean, if I can toot my own horn or whatever, pat myself on the back, that I've been noted for, like my ability to speak to a crowd or whatever.
Crush.
And almost make it seem like I'm talking to one person. That's all mental practice first. The first time I did that for a group of like 200 plus or more was the first Sunder Summit that I spoke at. And I've done multiple of those now. Sorry, that was kind of a sidetrack. But I spent time picturing it before it took place because I had no evidence. Here's the important part. I had no physical evidence to draw from that I was good at public speaking. Nothing to draw from. So I had to create that evidence for myself and see myself performing how I intended to perform before it took place. Then when the moment was called upon, it was time to speak in public, that part of me came up. That version of me that I've seen in my head so many times was the one that took the stage, not the one who's never done it before. And I think that's a piece that we could apply that to anything. Before you knock your first door, what would it look like? What do you want it to look like? What's the energy there? There's a whole book on this, Psycho-Cybernetics, Maxwell Maltz. Very boring read, just being straight up. But the gems in it is huge to understanding how we operate as human beings and what you do when you spend time seeing your future. And then second nugget, tying it to a physical, true memory of the past where you felt the same way that future success feels like. You know what I mean? Like if I felt proud or accomplished, I go back to a time in my past where I felt proud and accomplished. Visualizing those two things together and then seeing myself in the current moment that I'm wanting to live into, that's how you raise the image of you and you live into a creative future.
I love it, dude. The difference between fake it till you make it and act as is.
Yes.
From outside looking in, you're doing the same thing, but the intent and the visualization behind it is completely different, which will create different results for the individual.
Absolutely. It's a very important frame. You're not faking it. You're living into something. Yeah.
Love it, dude. I want to bounce around a couple more concepts before we close out here.
Let's do it.
Talk to me about comparison. So you were the first person that actually recommended this book to me, which has been a game changer, Gap in the Game.
Oh, yeah.
And it talks all about comparison and what you should be comparing yourself to. I like this concept a lot. I like dissecting it because it's something that I struggle with big time, even till this day. And we all know that comparison is the thief of joy.
Right.
I've learned that short-term comparison could be a little beneficial, but long-term comparison is always detrimental. So talk to me about comparison. Most people are dealing with it in one way or the other with social media and the highlight reel that we're exposed to every single day.
True.
What do entrepreneurs, what do people need to know about it to make sure it's not sucking the joy from their life?
The first thing I would tell you to look at is like comparison is a form of measurement, right? Comparison is measuring. Okay. What's the energy you get? If we think, I mean, this is all a theme, thoughts, feelings, actions, right? What's the energy you feel when you compare? And I always say, like, this is scripture, by the fruits you shall know them, right? Watch the fruit. If I'm feeling terrible about something, what action do I typically take when I feel that way? So if I'm measuring myself against someone else, I'm comparing, and I feel defeated, what's the likely action I'm going to take? How does that serve me? It's not good, typically, right? But on the contrary, if I compare myself to someone and I feel motivated or excited or energized or inspired, that's actually an emotion that I would say probably has good action attached to it. So I'm always careful first to say, by the fruits you shall know them. What's the fruit of this energy in this form of measurement? More than 90% of the people, though, if you're comparing, you're likely to feel into a limited state unless you measure correctly. And that's what The Gap and the Gain teaches. Dan Sullivan does this really well. Benjamin Hardy is the co-author, brings it out of him really well, puts it into form. What if they're, like most people when they're measuring as an entrepreneur, you're measuring against an ideal, right? So you're saying like, I'm getting into this business to create this new life for myself, and this is what it looks like, and here's my goal, and I'm going to be the best person or whatever, right? So you start working towards it, and shortly after a while, you'll start to measure yourself against that ideal. See where you are compared to where you want to be. And what do you notice every time you measure that way?
Never there.
You're never there, right? Even when you reach it. Actually, I was just doing a call for a company, and one of them wanted this like Lexus IS, right? Like that was a goal he set for himself. Love it, cool. He got it. He had gotten it 4 months prior. Okay, so I was like, wow, this is still pretty fresh for you. So when you think about having accomplished this goal, like, what do you feel now? And he's like, actually, I'm kind of bored of it, right? Here's the principle. What you're shooting for is typically an ideal. And it sounds like life will be great once you hit that ideal. But have you ever noticed when you hit it, it just loses its savor? There's a part of you, I believe it's divine. Okay, you don't have to believe in God to energy itself wants to expand. So if that's your school of thought, fine. But I believe you have like a divine heritage, and God, the God within you, like that greatness desires expansion. Like it wants to live to its potential. It wants to produce life. So your ideals are always going to change, which means it's impossible to hit it. You will always be comparing yourself against an impossible ideal because as soon as you hit it, it loses its savor, right? So understand that's just a form of measurement, just like comparison. So what if instead of measuring against the ideal, we measured against the starting point? What energy do you get when you look back to the day you just started your sales career, the day you just started your fitness journey, the day you just started seeking a loving relationship, and how far you've come? What energy do you get when you measure that?
Gratitude, appreciation, a feeling of being proud about how far you've come.
Yeah, always. And typically that's the energy that will actually move you towards the ideal itself. Versus comparing against the ideal, you get energy that keeps you stuck. So comparison is just a form of measurement. Choose how you measure, choose the type and quality of your action.
Game changer.
Yeah, that book, like I cried over myself after reading that book. It encourages you to do a 10-year look back. You want to cry? Give yourself a 10-year look back. You think you're falling short? 10-year look back on how far you've come in the last 10 years. You'll have some self-love for sure.
Well, it's so important because, we spent the first half of this podcast, and I would say most content out there is about how do you make more money? How do you perform at a higher level? How do you get more? How do you accomplish more? The Western mentality of more. And I think it's important. I've tied a lot of my identity to my professional performance, which is to some degree a little detrimental, but I also correlate the more money I make, the better person I become, the more money, impact, etc. But on the other side of the coin, just because you get the cars and the houses and the accolades and the recognition doesn't make you fulfilled and happy. You know, the higher you get, more levels, more devils. The higher you climb, the more people there is to compare yourself to, the more challenges and obstacles there are to keep yourself content and keep yourself happy. So if you don't bring in a little bit of these fulfillment concepts, a little bit of these concepts to not keep you complacent and not take your hunger away, but also to appreciate where you are, be where your feet are, you know, smell the roses, all these different types of examples. I think you need to marry the two if you want to be rich in finances, but also rich in joy. Because if not, I think if you get too deep in one or the other, you can kind of get a little lost in the sauce.
Absolutely. In fact, on that community call or that coaching call that I was doing, someone asked, like, well, how do you shoot for something big? Right then, like, are you not supposed to shoot for something? No, 100%. You should think above the limit of like possibility, right? Bob teaches that 100%. Every self-development person always, you start with something huge. So it's not that like you're not trying to work towards ideals, but it's less about the thing. It's about who you become to get the thing, to be capable of having that thing in your life. What you want is just a sign to invoke who you are to become to accomplish that thing or to live life that way. So the idea is eyes on prize, measure progress. Eyes on prize, measure the progress. You do that, you'll find fulfillment and confidence while becoming a different version of yourself that's capable of living life at a higher plane. Eyes on prize, turn around, measure the progress.
So good, dude. So good. Zach, we could talk for hours.
Dude, but you're a ton of fun.
Yeah, you are as well. For time's sake, my last question for you.
Okay.
A bit of a measure question, I guess you can say. So if the Zach today, founder of MindRx Academy, successful direct sales vet, could go back in time to the 2017, 2018 version of Zach that was in the pit, that had all the self-doubts, the self-limitations, a bit of a dark time, what could the Zach today give advice to the 2018 Zach to accelerate his joy, happiness, and progress?
Gosh.
It's a loaded one.
Dang. No, that's deep. Okay. This is going to sound cheesy, but I would first and foremost say just trust, right? Like, find something to trust in, find someone to trust, because we highlighted this, like the thing that I learned the most was the resilience of the human spirit. Just see yourself making it through, start to see yourself making it through, and you will. And that maybe sound like a low answer for recovering from the pit, but man, if you have to believe in something. And even faith that you're falling apart is actually a form of trusting something. Like that's just trust that everything is falling apart. And you have to believe in that, and you're going to find evidence to support that. Trust that you'll make it through. Trust that it's for your benefit. Trust that there's something or someone behind this in your life that knows what's best for you, that wants what's best for you. I think the source of all love is going to lift you up, and this was placed for your benefit. If you can ask let me say it this way, because this is a nugget that I think has application, tactical application. I would tell that version of me to watch what questions I'm asking myself. Because I think what we don't realize, anytime you ask yourself, like, you know, what's wrong with me? Why aren't I better at this?
Why is this happening to me?
Why is this happening? Those questions are all like consciously formed ideas. But typically we don't give ourselves time to process the answer. Yet every question we ask, our subconscious fires an answer. Like we get an answer to every question we ask. So I ask, what's wrong with me? Why is this happening to me? Without recognizing the answer or having awareness on it, my subconscious says, well, it's because you suck at this. My subconscious says it's because no one wants you. And it comes with the energy that comes with that. So if there was anything, it would be about trusting the process, trust that this is for you, and watch the quality of your questions. If instead during that moment I asked myself, how is this for me? If I asked myself, like, what's the good that's coming from this? Who is this helping me become? The subconscious answers would be like a freaking savage. You know, someone who will inspire others. Someone who's capable to lift others up from the depths, right? That's the answer I would get from that type of question. And I think it would have saved me a little quicker. If anything.
Well said, dude. Zach, where can people find you if they want to get connected, see your content, want to learn more about coaching?
Appreciate it. Yeah. At MindRx Academy on Instagram, TikTok, the YouTube channel, Foreman. We'll be launching a podcast here actually soon in the new year. Yeah, I'll probably have you come on there.
Would love to, dude.
It's the best discussions ever with Cohen. And then we have like this foundational group. If you're in direct sales, if I may say, we have a foundational group. There's 3 tiers to it depending on where you're at in your career. There are 3 runs of this. It's a 90-day thing where you're in a community of like-minded individuals thinking about the same level of thoughts, quality of thought, same level of skills, and the execution of those skills. So it's designed to get you from that area of thinking to the next and beyond to really live into that freedom that you came into sales for. We're launching it in the 3rd week of January. We'll do it 3 times throughout the year. So it's focused and exclusive, and we can give you as much attention as you deserve. So any information about that, you can go to mindrxacademy.com and seek some more information there.
Love it, dude. You're a wizard at what you do, Zach. Always
Thanks.
appreciate the conversation. Guys, we'll see you in the new year, 2025. You're listening to this right now. This will be the last show of 2024. Get your paper and pen down. Get your intentions right. 2024 is going to be an iconic year for a lot. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll see you in the new year.